Can you actually gain weight and muscle faster with a dirty bulk than with a clean bulk? Watch this.
Our next caller is Landon from North Carolina.
Landon, what's happening? How can we help you?
Fellas, how we doing this morning?
Doing good, man.
Good.
Right on. Appreciate you guys taking the time to talk with me. Got a question for y'all, but before I dive into that, just want to say the obligatory thank you. After years of hammering myself in the gym and not really knowing why I was plateauing, finally feeling like I can get some concrete truth and real information from you guys. So truly appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
I've also introduced you to some of my family. Shout out my brother-in-law, Neil Wagstaff. He's running Anabolic right now and loving it.
Awesome.
Right.
Got my wife running Starter too, so she's a big fan of that. Trying to convince her of the reverse diet, but struggling a little bit there. But we'll get her soon.
Excellent.
So just some quick background. I'll try to make it quick. I know you guys are busy. Played basketball in college. Did a lot of explosive movements, cleans, squats, that type of thing. Never really bulked to try to put on size. Once I finally graduated, I did try to go on kind of a bro split, bulked a lot, put on muscle pretty rapidly. Within the first 8 weeks or so, I gained probably 30 pounds on my bench press, got some, stretch marks on my chest, hard-earned stretch marks there. Gained way too much weight though. I did a dirty bulk, eating McDoubles, washing it down with a Pop-Tart smoothie. I mean, I was getting after it. So put on way too much fat, but also gained muscle incredibly fast. Stopped working out about a year after that for the next 5 years, got back into it during COVID and did, bulks and cuts on and off from there. Most recently did a cut down to about 7.5% body fat. And it worked my way up to about 10% now. Running Anabolic, loving it, amazing program. Got some more of your programs as well. I plan on starting. But my question is, I'm doing a clean bulk right now, and my muscle gain, while it's happening, I'm gaining strength, gaining muscle. I can see it. It's still not as fast as that initial dirty bulk I did 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm wondering if there's any science around, I know long-term dirty bulks are a poor strategy, but in 8 weeks or so, scientifically, do you put on more muscle mass doing a dirty bulk? Or was that just a one-off thing where all the factors might have been right in my life where I gained muscle that quickly?
All right.
That's a cool question.
Yeah. So, okay, there's a couple things we want to consider with this. One is you were a collegiate athlete. And at that level of sports, you're on the I don't know, the better end of genetics when it comes to muscle building. So your body is going to build more muscle probably faster than most average people. So that you've got that going for you. Okay, so let's consider that. Number two, eating in a dirty bulk, especially initially, probably will put on a little bit more muscle. The challenge though is when you measure lean body mass, that's also measuring water. And you tend to hold more glycogen, more water with more calories. That's considered lean body mass, it's not body fat. So sometimes it's hard to separate. And I know there's like body fat tests and stuff, but they're not super necessarily accurate with that. And then the other thing to consider is, okay, let's say you could gain 10 pounds with a cleaner bulk. And let's say 8 pounds of that is muscle, or you could gain 15 pounds, but 9 or 10 pounds of it is muscle. Is that really a worthy trade-off? I mean, if you're starting off at 6% body fat, maybe, because you don't really care about adding extra body fat at that point. But for a lot of people, it's not worth it, because then when they go and they try to back out, they end up losing that extra pound or two that they gained eating all that stuff. And then, of course, there's the health implications. It's just not healthy for your body. Now, you're young, so you're probably not going to see a lot in that way. But as you get older, you may notice that eating that way, it's just not going to it's not going to work for your body. You're going to notice issues with your health. Maybe long-term digestive issues can start to become an issue. I know I suffered from those because of the way I would, quote unquote, bulk when I was younger. And then lastly, you will see more strength oftentimes with more body fat gain. And that has to do with energy. It has to do with leverage. CNS output might be better. That's why powerlifters tend to carry more body fat and find that they're stronger in doing so. And so that can mess with you a little bit. Like I've done this where I've gained more weight, maybe not as much more muscle, but a lot more body fat, but my strength was a lot higher. Like, what's the value of that? I don't know. It depends. If I was competing, I guess, in an open weight class, that might be okay. Or if I like to, have certain PR numbers just for my own ego, that might be okay. But as I've gotten older and trained more people, I just see there's just more value in trying to minimize fat gain than there is in just trying to gain as much as possible, unless I'm dealing with someone who's super shredded, in which case gaining some body fat is a good idea.
You also have to consider that when you dirty bulk, right, we tend to be in way more calories than we necessarily need to in order to bulk. And what you potentially do when you do that is actually add fat cells to the body, which makes it increasingly more difficult when you go back to cutting. So this was like really common in the bodybuilding world with my peers. So with my peers, I would see like some of my buddies they would be in the bulk part of getting ready for a show, and they would just eat everything in sight. And I'd see them put on 30, 50 pounds, all to try and cut that back. And what I'd see would happen is every time they go back to a cut, for the next show, it was increasingly more difficult for them to get as lean as they did before. Doing the same stuff, doing just as much cardio, dieting the same way, and they would be confused, and it'd be like, man, what's happening is every time you go back to this bulk, you bulk so aggressively, your body's got to be adding fat cells, and so you're making it that much more difficult for you to lean out. Also, back to kind of what Sal was saying, there is a little bit of deception there on how much muscle you're putting on, because when you're dirty bulk and you're eating that many calories, you're filled up with extra water, you're filled up with extra glycogen, so the muscle bellies look filler, so you look like you're putting on more. And I know coming from being a skinny kid who was trying to build, how that psychologically can fuck with you a little bit, like, oh man, this is working, I feel better. But then it's just that much more difficult when you cut. And then when you cut, what ends up happening, you have to cut so hard to get off that extra body fat you put on, you end up with the same amount of muscle, or sometimes even a little bit less when you get back to the desired body fat percentage that you want. And so what I have found works really well is, okay, I want a clean bulk, but then when I'm a leaner guy, if I carry myself at 6 to 10% type of body fat, hey, when I go out on Friday night with my wife and we eat, I'm not going to trip out if I have some dessert, so I'm going to enjoy. So in that sense, I wouldn't call it like
there's some flexibility there.
Yeah, exactly. That's wouldn't call it like a dirty bulk, but then I'm also not really worried too much. I keep myself relatively lean. I eat most of my calories through good choices of food. But hey, it's Friday night with my wife, and I'm in a bulk anyways. So tonight I'm gonna have that pizookie after I have that steak and rice or whatever like that. So to me, that's how I would allow some of that flexibility of allowing some of those quote unquote dirty foods into the diet. But not go giving that as an excuse of oh, now I'm eating Pop-Tart smoothies and I'm eating, Sour Patch Candy Kids, all that type of shit. That's only going to make it more difficult for you when you go back to lean out. I wouldn't do things like that, but I would give yourself some flexibility in your normal eating patterns.
And Landon, let me rephrase your question, because what we're kind of presenting right now is a bit of a false binary or dichotomy, which is, eat clean bulk, not as many calories, or eat a dirty bulk with more calories. Here's the real comparison that we want to look at. Same amount of calories, okay? So both in a bulk, even if it's an excessive bulk, but one of them is made up of foods that are more whole, natural, not fast food, not candy, not what would be considered garbage. The other one includes fast food, candy, garbage. Now I'm going to tell you from that standpoint, because I've done both and I've trained people who've done both, the whole natural, quote unquote, healthier version, even though the calories are the same, builds more muscle. It just builds more muscle. The other one tends to gain more body fat. So even if your goal is to just gain as much muscle as possible, and you're like, I'm going to just eat way more calories, you're still better off doing it with calories that come from foods that don't mess with your palate sensitivity, that don't mess with your dopamine, that don't mess with your insulin, foods that are on the healthier side. Now, you can do this with, calorically dense, healthier foods. Like you can get ground beef, 80% ground beef. Mix it with some rice. Make your rice with bone broth. You got yourself a high-calorie bowl of rice and bone broth and, fatty ground beef. Throw in some vegetables if you want some fiber, right? If you can have dairy, whole milk, have a glass of whole milk with every meal, there's some good, dense calories that you're going to get. It's not soda. It's not garbage. It's not, crap, right? So those are just a couple examples of ways you can add calories with foods that are better for your body. And like I said, when you go apples to apples, 3,500 calories, or 4,000 calories, 4,000 calories, but one of them is, more what we would consider healthier, better options, you gain more muscle that way. That's my experience. That's been my experience across the board. And people just feel better too. Like dirty bulks with crappy food just feel like shit, and that's another trade-off I don't think is worth it.
Right. I guess just a quick follow-up on that, and I appreciate the information. That makes a lot of sense. Just in terms of, and again, I know this can vary so widely depending on the person and all kinds of factors, but just to try to tamper my expectations for muscle growth and when to expect to see size increase. I mean, a rough estimation, does that take 3 months? Does it take 6 to 9 months, or is it hard to really tell?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I would guess, like I said, because of your level of because you were an athlete at a pretty high level, you're probably going to build muscle faster than the average person. How tall are you, and what's your body weight? You said you're 10% body fat right now?
I'm 6'5", 205 at about 10%.
All right, so 205 at 6'5", boy, I think you could probably get up to 220, 225 with right around the body fat you're at now, with probably a year and a half of good, consistent training. I'm going to give you a guess. Now, here's the deal. I could be totally off because genetics make a big difference, but I'm hitting, you're hitting all cylinders, getting good sleep. You're eating good. You're hitting a surplus with your calories. You're getting stronger. You're not losing sleep because you just had a baby or whatever. I know you said you're married. So everything going great. I mean, you could probably gain a good 15 pounds of lean body mass within a year and a half, 2 years of consistent, doing it that way. And
how old are you right now?
I'm 31.
Okay. Good years.
Yeah. Those are good building years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate it, guys. That's very encouraging to know, and excited about it. I've got anabolic now. Gonna hopefully run through performance, aesthetic, and then I've got powerlifting strong. So that's going to be my year's worth of programming. So.
You got it. Are you doing Prime or Prime Pro to help with the mobility issues? Because when you're packing on muscle like that, you want to make sure you maintain, mobility.
Yep, I've got Prime. So I'm using that every single workout. Definitely can immediately feel the difference, especially my ankles and hips when I squat. So
good deal.
That's been a game changer.
Especially when you're tall like you are. So I'm going to send you Prime Pro just because it gets a little deeper. So I'll send you that for free. And then a good program to follow up with some of these would be Symmetry, especially with someone tall like you. The unilateral stuff tends to work really, really well with somebody who's got long limbs.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I didn't expect that. So I really appreciate it and look forward to putting that in the routine.
You got it, man. Thanks for calling in.
All right. Take care.
No problem. Yeah, you guys remember? Well, I don't think Justin ever had to deal with this, but
I don't know. What are you going to say?
Jason's gaining muscle right now, just us talking about it. But
yeah, that's true.
I know Adam and we've gone through this process. Do you remember when you piece together like, oh, if I eat like a lot of calories and make it like whole natural food, I just build more muscle?
Yeah.
I mean, it just blew me away.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, like in terms of like building more muscle through like whole foods. So there has to be a factor to that if you have gastrointestinal issues.
Yes.
This is something I did go through, right? With just pounding a bunch of shakes and just eating whatever I possibly could just for the calorie sake. But really not being able to assimilate a lot of it. And a lot of it just went through me, with diarrhea, with gas, everything else. So it's like, you got to consider that's a factor.
Yeah, no, there's that. You feel like crap. You're probably not going to work out as well. You're probably not going to sleep as well.
There's also the behaviors around your food choice too. So like one of the things that I remember when I was allowing myself to quote unquote dirty bulk and just kind of eat whatever, right? Just to get extra calories. When I did an assessment on what I was consuming, it was like, okay, sure, I was hitting 4,000, 5,000 calories, but most of it came from carbohydrates or saturated fat, and I was still not hitting my protein intake.
That's true.
Because I would gravitate towards these, snacky type foods and desserts and candies. And
they're always heavy carbs.
Yeah, they're all heavy carbs, and I'm not even getting quality protein from there. And then I look at my thing and I'd be like, oh shit, I had 120 grams of protein today, but I had 4,000 calories because it was all in like carbs and sugar and shit like that. So, that's the other thing that I don't like about the process of dirty bulking is that it kind of gives people this pass of like, oh, I just eat everything in sight, and then hopefully I hit my targets, my macro targets. But then when you go back and you actually track it all, you're like, oh wow, I tend to gravitate towards, because honestly, eating, especially for a guy like this, 6'5", eating enough calories to put on size for a guy that tall and lanky and an athlete,
humongous chore.
Oh man, probably 4,000 or 5,000 calories, and
easy.
doing that through steak and potatoes and chicken. Or, I mean, that's hard. So
Yeah.
you tend to throw in these calories to try and get up over that number, and then you realize like, oh shit, I'm eating just a bunch of Pop-Tarts and stuff just at that calorie.
You know what's
intake.
interesting? The athletes, the traditional athletes of the world who have really figured out how to gain lots of weight, sumo wrestlers. And if you look at, and sumo has been around for a long time, there's a traditional dish that sumo wrestlers would eat to gain weight. I don't remember the name of it. Maybe Doug can find it, but it's a type of a soup, and it's a high calorie soup. And the sumo wrestlers, and remember, these guys don't mind gaining body fat. Obviously, they want to be huge, but they also have to be mobile. They have to move. If you've ever watched sumo wrestlers, fight, they're actually incredibly mobile for guys their size.
Super explosive.
For guys that 500 pounds, 400 pounds, like they can move. And this soup, what's the soup called, Doug?
Chanko nabe.
Chanko nabe. And they will say, these are guys that just want to put on size. They will say avoid junk food. And this is something that's been around for a long time. So eating whole natural foods and gaining weight makes you feel better. That's just the bottom line.